So let's move from the international level to the local level. And what I'd like you to do is we're going to pause here and take a look at a clip. I want you to be mindful of what feelings come up for you, how that may affect you, and what your thoughts are about this occurring, and how you might think this affects gay men when they know that these sort of issues are going on.
For a minute, I need to talk to you about something that's really serious and really sad. And if you know me, it's hard to talk about sad stuff without getting emotional, but this is really important to talk about. On February 12th, an openly gay 15-year-old boy named Larry, who was an 8th grader in Oxnard, California, was murdered by a fellow 8th grader named Brandon. Larry was killed because he was gay. Days before he was murdered, Larry asked his killer to be his Valentine. I don't want to be political. This is not political. I'm not a political person, but this is personal to me. A boy has been killed, and a number of lives have been ruined. And somewhere along the line, the killer, Brandon, got the message that it's so threatening and so awful and so horrific that Larry would want to be his Valentine, that killing Larry seemed to be the right thing to do. And when the message out there is so horrible that to be gay, you can get killed for it, we need to change the message. Larry was not a second-class citizen. I am not a second-class citizen. It is okay if you're gay. I don't care what people say. I don't care what people think. And I know there are entire groups of people who face discrimination every single day, and we're a long way from treating each other equally. All of it is unacceptable, all of it. But I would like you to start paying attention to how often being gay is a punchline of a monologue, or how often gay jokes are in a movie. And that kind of message, laughing at someone because they're gay, is just the beginning. It starts with laughing at someone, then it's verbal abuse, then it's physical abuse, and then it's this kid, Brandon, killing a kid like Larry. We must change our country, and we can do it. We can do it with our behavior. We can do it with our messages that we send our children. We can do it with our vote. This is an election year, and there's a lot of talk about change. I think one thing we should change is hate. Check on who you're voting for, and does that person really, truly believe that we are all equal under the law? And if you're not sure, change your vote. We deserve better. My heart goes out to everybody involved in this horrible, horrible incident, all the families, and this poor, even, Brandon's life has changed because he did this. So we're going to put more information on this on our website, and we're going to have a wonderful, fabulous, funny show after this. We'll be right back.
So my purpose in showing you this video is I want you to be able to emotionally connect to the experience of the gay male. What is it like to experience prejudice and discrimination out in the public, and something this severe? So if this moved you at all, if you had some emotional connection, I want you to imagine for a second what it's like to be a gay male and know this story. How does that impact you? How does it affect you? Did you grow up in a similar story like this? Because I can tell you, certainly, this story is not a rare one. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone grows up in the same way, in the same communities. I have plenty of friends and colleagues that could tell you my family was totally accepting, the community I lived in was great and accepting, but they know about this, and knowing about this impacts them. And certainly if this has been the story of a gay male in their development, it has had an impact on their development. So one of the things we need to think about as far as gay youth and young gay males is that they face bullying, sometimes on a frequent basis. They are 3 to 4 times more likely to commit suicide. As far as other issues of prejudice and discrimination, many gay men face discriminatory practices in the workplace, and in fact, you can still legally be fired in 29 states in the U.S. There are some states, obviously, that have protection, but in 29 states you can still be fired because of sexual orientation. There's no protection there. So in the spirit of discussing workplace issues, I've included a link here to the Human Rights Campaign. It gives you some information about employment laws and policies, and it includes a map that shows you what states have laws for protection and those that don't. So it's really good information for you to have, and I encourage you to look at the Human Rights Campaign. You can go online and find them. They offer all kinds of videos, pamphlets, materials, support resources, all kinds of things that are very useful in working with gay men. One of the things, though, I do want you to be mindful of is even if a person is in a state where they're protected, that does not guarantee them that they're not going to experience some level of prejudice and discrimination in the workplace that can come in the form of harassment and the creation of a hostile work environment. It can be subtle, it can be overt, and there are certain things that are certainly protected, whereas others may not be because of the subtlety attached to it. So be mindful that that can still exist even in protected states. In the spirit of that, think about this term microaggressions. Microaggressions, the term that we started using in talking about multicultural work, often used when we're talking about sexism, racism, and those sorts of things. These are those subtle behaviors that are very prejudicial, that express some level of bias. They certainly express prejudicial views, but they're so subtle that even the person who's committing the microaggression may not realize it. My best example of this is the term, "that's so gay." I hear this in the youth groups all the time now. People don't realize that the term, "that's so gay," meaning, translation, "that's so weird, that's so bizarre, that's so wrong," it never means "that's great." Often we've lost a connection to the phrasing, "that's so gay," means gay is bad, gay is wrong. And even if persons aren't using that because of someone's sexual orientation, the terminology is still an expression of saying gay is bad. And that's a good example of microaggression, because many people don't think about sexual orientation when they say it and don't realize that that's actually very condemning, damning, and can be very painful for persons in the community. Know that housing issues can certainly come up as far as prejudice and discrimination, being able to secure housing, being able to have housing. For example, when I first moved to California with my partner at that time, I couldn't rent an apartment because we couldn't combine our income. Whereas my married friends, my heterosexual married friends, absolutely could have the same apartment complex because they could combine their income, but simply because at that time we didn't have a domestic partnership, as far as a legal domestic partnership, we didn't have a marriage, and so we couldn't combine our income. So we couldn't have that apartment. We had to find a place that would actually accept income from two different persons, and often you're going to find that those are not always the best places. So also think about public space issues as far as prejudice and discrimination. If you go with if you have a same-sex partner, and you go out tonight, you can hold their hands. You can go to the movies and not be ostracized or yelled at or called names because you can hold their hand. And that's not always true for gay men out in the public. So having space and being out in the public space, which is very focused on heteronormative rules and heteronormative expressions, can be very difficult. So other issues as far as prejudice and discrimination on the local level, there's a lack of recognition of gay men as a minority, and this is even by other minority groups. That this is one of the few areas that you can still be okay about being prejudiced and discriminatory. This lack of recognition of a minority is basically saying you can't have the same rights, you can't have the same privileges, because many people will protect minority rights except for persons in the LGBTQ community. And once again, as you saw in the video, there's certainly expressions of verbal and physical violence against gay men. I've included a link here for another pamphlet from the Human Rights Campaign, and this is about hate crimes and statistics as they occur in America. And I'll tell you that an occurrence over the last 10-20 years, I typically see rates that range from about 15% to 20% of the hate crimes are due to sexual orientation. So take a look at that when you get a chance. It's very helpful. Once again, this is great material from the Human Rights Campaign.